yours.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Namrata. This is my colleague, Kritika. We have a third partner, Spiros, who unfortunately could not make it because of ill health, but he's here with us in spirit. So our study is on how students use generative AI for learning. We ran our surveys with the other group, and our literature review was also like a combined effort. So we'll start off with what we are doing. And just for some background, I think it's a little cliche to say that students are using generative AI now, but most commonly it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot. LSE also recently launched its collaboration with Anthropic, but that was not really popular on the list, and we'll get to why. And based on our literature survey, our literature review, we found that largely learning involves cognitive skills that are understanding, evaluating, applying, writing, and synthesizing. This was something that the other team touched upon too. While, of course, learning is a much more complex process, most of the literature does bucket it into these different categories. And our study looks to explore how generative AI affects the various stages of this cognitive process and the academic learning process. So our research questions largely focused on first, how students are using generative AI, because we do know they're using it, but then what is the most common task, or where do they rely on it more, and what really prompts them to actually use generative AI more. And then based on their own self-perception, we try to understand what cognitive skills it affected most, and where they thought it really enhanced their abilities, and where they thought it actually was not particularly useful or even harmful for their actual learning. And then, of course, we also ask them questions about their own perceptions of like how they find generative AI to be useful. Do they think it's reliable, and do they think it's trustworthy?
And mostly, I think it acts upon to the previous team's research, and also with a little bit of contrasting points. So we did this survey together. We collected 164 responses, and we have 117 valid responses, which is slightly different to their number, which was 104. Because we also included people who do not use generative AI for learning. And we did focus groups with 2 focus groups, one in the winter term and one in the spring term. So our focus group was a little different in the sense that we had the same participants for both the focus groups, so that to see that if their perception changes or stays the same during the term and during the exam period. So our focus group consists of 10 participants with 9 postgrads and 1 undergrad. And we also picked them to be having different courses, both quant background and also quantitative background. And so our analysis would be on both on the quantitative stuff in the survey and also the qualitative part of the focus group. So we want to move on to findings because we have a lot of findings to cover. So firstly, we found that out of the 117 people, or 88.9%, almost 89% of people use generative AI particularly for academic work. And ChatGPT was the most popular one, with most of them using ChatGPT. And these are the 3 main concepts which the previous team also covered. We have the chart for it. Like you can see, we have like almost most of them using ChatGPT, and with just 13 people using Claude. We have a reasoning on why is that. Yeah.
We obviously asked them what they're mostly using ChatGPT for, AI for. ChatGPT is synonymous at this point. But as you can see, most of this allowed for picking multiple choices based on how they are actually using it. And what we saw, and what the other team also mentioned, was understanding a concept and summarizing text usually fall high on the list. And brainstorming ideas is a close second, along with helping with my readings, which is fairly open-ended, but we also wanted to sort of understand through our focus group what this actually means. When this was the survey findings, of course. So this, again, we sort of
a little bit surprised on that was, as you can see, we actually expected people to use it more for coding, for quantitative background. Surprisingly, we had like less number for code. And we had more number for qualitative background, which was like quite a surprise. And participants were for the survey, even for the survey, we had like a good number of both quantitative people and qualitative people. So this came as a surprise for us. And moving on.
Again, breaking down the cognitive skills that's involved based on those responses. So we sort of divided the cognitive skills into a higher order and a lower order skills. So the lower order ones would essentially be understanding and summarizing, because this perhaps involves just reading a text, whereas the higher order skills such as brainstorming or challenging ideas really involves engaging with the text. So we found that largely because the reliance is on low order skills, we do sort of see a downstream effect in terms of where it affects them in brainstorming or writing. But then the reliance on AI tools for the higher order skills is much lesser. So we see that downstream, they do want to sort of take ownership of their products, because I think something summarized by AI is more academically viable than something that's written by AI. And that's a perception that we come across in the focus groups as well.
Yeah, so we found that 84.6% of the people find generative AI to be like effective, and also most of them believe that it also improves learning. And in terms of trust, people actually trusted more quantitative outputs, which was like a contrast between the usage and the trust. I think that's more because for qualitative, we had like many participants mentioned that AI tools give a lot of fake references and fake quotes. So I think that's one of the main reasons for this. And due to inconsistent answers and hallucinations, people do have trust issues with the AI tools.
Yeah, and I think one more insight that we managed to get was also that with the more quantitative outputs, it's possible that there is one right answer.
Yeah.
Like with math, there's usually one right answer, whereas with the more qualitative sort of studies, it is possible that you can have counter arguments, you can have different understandings of the same text. So this also is reflective in how they actually think about whether a particular response is trustworthy or not.
Yeah. And even with the coding parts, we had a participant from the focus group mention that even with coding, they couldn't completely ask the AI tool to generate a part of code, because the AI tool usually tends to give a function that was not taught in their course. So they were very reluctant to use that piece of a code to their assessment or even a classwork material.
And you get a few more graphs now. So we did ask them about what was their main concern when they were using AI, and this was again from a survey with, and it had 102 valid responses. So I think academic dishonesty actually scores lesser than inaccurate information. So I think academic dishonesty tends to be seen as a more gray space, because this is being integrated as a tool for learning, whereas inaccurate information is a much bigger no-go zone, because you don't want to be citing the wrong things. You don't want to be, coming across as saying the wrong thing as well.
And we also asked what would people do when the model produces a misleading or outdated information. And most of them said they would look for information themselves somewhere else. This also shows us that people give up using generative tool when it's not helping them. Like, it's not in the sense that they don't argue with it, they don't challenge it much like they say that they do. So when they don't find the answer to be reliable, they just give that up and tend to like go for themselves. And we can also see that they manually fact check the information as well. So it shows that they don't use the tool as effectively as they think they do. Yeah.
Yeah, and just the last insight on this is whether they actually find AI to be efficient at the task that they're using. And I think most of the responses lean towards moderate efficiency. This again ties back to the previous responses, where they think if it's inaccurate information, if I'm doing the work anyway, I might as well just do it from scratch. So I think that all sort of just comes down together in terms of how people actually say they're using generative AI versus how they actually use it in practice. And for our focus group insights, I think just a little more detail about our focus group. One was conducted in the winter term, and with the same group of participants, we had them speak to us during the spring term. And the key intention was to sort of understand how they're using AI, but also to sort of understand what changes as the exam term comes by. And this is where I think questions about time and how the curriculum is designed really become more important, because I think there's a sense of inevitability that we found with students using generative AI. And I think largely what we did focus on was sort of understanding the tasks that they're using it for. And the most common sort of things that did come up was obviously exam preparation, because the winter term was also fairly close to the exam term that we have going on right now. So exam preparation, summarizing, debugging for the more quantitative courses, and proofreading was again high on the list. And this is from the 10 participants that we had. And of course, like while they engage with these tools, what we also did sort of see almost in every single response was that I do use it, but I also know it's not particularly great. So I do go out of my way to ensure that any information that I get from there is actually verified. And also sort of there was surprisingly, our focus group was very candid in terms of sort of how they use, these tools, and also the idea of stigma attached to using it and admitting to actually using generative AI, because I think that ties down to academic integrity. And where we essentially, when we did ask students about whether they prefer a course where AI is completely banned, with professors saying that, no, you can't use this for anything, versus courses where it is allowed, where they say that you can use generative AI. I don't think any professors right now out of their way going to say that you can use generative AI, but where the professors are more open towards its actual usage, we do sort of see that there is a preference for students to pick those courses, because even if they don't personally use it, they do see it as a tool that can potentially be used, at a moment of crunch.
To add on to that, I think people also mentioned that it's mainly due to the stigma, that because when we asked a question on will you be able to, like, are you using generative AI tool in public freely, like say in a library or a study space? And there were people who mentioned that they were first very reluctant to open ChatGPT on their screen when they are sitting in a library, because they were very scared that people saw them using it, they're going to accuse them of cheating. So they were very scared of that. But then in our first focus group, many people mentioned that they were very happy to see that this conversation being taken place. We initially thought that people will only sign up for focus group just for the vouchers, but then none of them mentioned about the vouchers until the last minute, because they were really interested in the topic, and they were like, we are so happy that this is being normalized by the school themselves, and this is being spoken about by the school. So and also like trying to see how other people use it, make us feel better in the way that we use it as well. And I think we covered everything. Yeah.
And this is our key conclusions from our study, the survey, and the focus group. I think one recurring theme was definitely that, Gen AI is the new Google, which is also, given that Google is integrating Gen AI into its search, it's something that's sort of reflective of where the technology itself is progressing. I think another thing that did come up was, even where students are reluctant to use Gen AI, you do see that it does pop up everywhere. I think we had someone from the law department speak about, say, their LexisNexis search, which is basically a law database. But then even when they didn't want to use AI tools, there was like an AI summary that always kept popping up anyway. So I think there's a sense of inevitability even where the technology is progressing. But of course, this is not an uncritical usage. We do see that they are sort of cognizant of the impact it has on critical thinking and writing, especially. And also, naturally, there are questions of academic integrity. One thing was, of course, as Kritika mentioned, destigmatization about using it as a tool itself for academic purposes, and also the need for institutional guidance and sort of uniformity in the policies across departments for using or not using Gen AI. But I think the last finding was the most interesting one for us, because students are very against professors using Gen AI for classwork. So the irony is really strong in that.
I think we had a student come to us in the second focus group, that because we gave this question on the first focus group, and the student thought about the question during the time period, and then they came to us and they said that I actually thought about the question, but then this feels a little bit unfair, saying that we are justifying that we can use it and why can't the professors use it? So that we think the professors can actually use it in terms of like organizing stuff and trying to make inclusive learning materials like videos and stuff like that, but maybe not for feedback, because we come here to an institution where we want the professor's experience to reflect on us. So we had people to think about that and also change their perception of that.
Yeah, and I think particularly for the last one, it's also interesting because we see a lot of this coming up more frequently now. It's also education not as a purely cognitive process, but also as a consumer good. Because I think one common theme is if we are paying so much to come to LSE, we don't want our professors to use the same tools that we are using. We want them to be, there's a certain level of expectation of difference in terms of, who uses it and what their actual role is in the classroom. As well.
We forgot to mention the Claude usage. So we had a perfect timing with our focus groups. In our first focus group, that was when the Claude partnership was announced. So we spoke about that with our participants. And in the second focus group, that's when the access was actually given. So we spoke about that as well. But the funny part was people were still reluctant to use it, even though it was free, because they were concerned about the privacy policies. Because there was a person who mentioned that they use Copilot, but they don't use their university account because they are still reluctant on the data policies with the school and the AI company. So we had that. And overall, I think people agreed that it might affect their critical thinking and comprehension skills in the long term, but then they somehow at the last minute they somehow like couldn't resist themselves, instead of like using it for tasks that are like easier to say, like say there were comments on that for seminars. When I'm going for a seminar at the last minute, before in like previous years, I wouldn't have anything to see it, so I will go with a blank mind, so I wouldn't know what's happening in the seminar. But now, even if I'm going in last minute without preparation, I'll just ask a tool to give a summary. At least now, even if it's not an in-depth summary, I'll have something to know that this is what we are talking about today. So people somehow tend to like rely on these tools at the last minute.
Yeah, and that brings us to the end of our presentation. We would also like to thank Dr. Saxe, Dr. Stewart, and Dr. Chodoso Silva for the guidance and mentorship through the project.